biggest hurdle I had was self-doubt. I think, is this stupid? Is this dumb? Like
why am I doing
this? And so like I always had to like battle that.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to How the Wise One Grows. So you know how sometimes we get that really annoying voice in our head saying, you can't do it, you're not good enough, that self-doubt soundtrack that might repeat in your mind? Well, in today's episode, we are throwing it back to episode 19 with Jada and David, where we talk about how you can overcome that voice of self-doubt. So in this episode, you'll learn Jada and David's story and how they overcame self-doubt and transitioned from wedding photographers to conceptual artists. You'll learn how to tap into your creativity and set goals, and how we can continue to move through self-doubt through the many waves of life that we face. I also just want to take a moment to thank you for listening today and supporting this podcast. If you want to support this podcast even further, you can follow on whatever streaming platform you're listening to right now. You can leave a review and share an episode you love with a friend, maybe this episode. And you can join the Dream Team for as little as $3 a month to keep this podcast going. I like to think of it as a monthly coffee date for our mindful conversations and meditations. But before we get started, let's take a moment to land here together with 3 deep breaths. So just take a moment to notice where your body makes contact with the earth. You can soften your shoulders down the back and gently rest your eyes if it's safe, or just soften your gaze at a point in front of you. And take a big breath in, fill your chest, fill your belly with air. Exhale, open your mouth, let it out. Again, inhale, chest and belly expand. Exhale, let it go. One more inhale. And exhale. And return to where your body makes contact with the earth as you slowly open your eyes and return to this space. So I spoiled it. We are here with Jada and David today, but I will formally introduce them to you. Jada and David Parrish, this is probably the only time Jada will get me to say Parrish and not Zazier, are a husband and wife creative duo based in Richmond, Virginia. They use plywood and paint to construct sets and create bright, bold sceneries where their characters are confined, lost, curious, or bouncing back and forth between moments of happiness and despair. In 2021, they completed their 100 set project, where they successfully built 100 sets and photographed 100 shoots in 1 year. Their work has been recognized by the International Photography Awards, the Chromatic Awards, and they were longlisted for their Aesthetica Art Prize. Holy cow. It's really cool because as I'm reading that, I was kind of feeling emotional because I'm like, shit, they did all of that in a year. Like what I just read to you is only what they've accomplished in the last year, not like the insane things they've done before that point.
Wow, Holly. Thanks for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
That lifted us up.
Well, it's like really freaking cool, which kind of lends me to what I wanted to touch on first today. Because today we're going to talk a lot about what you've accomplished in the last year, but a huge thing that a lot of people might not know is like you built an amazing business before that point. And like you were huge wedding photographers and built a business out of just from the two of you like in your apartment together. So I'm just so like proud of you reading that, how you went from building one huge thing and then taking this step into something that I think you've like said in my perception is feels more like you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we started a wedding and portrait photography business in 2013, and we were like pretty like diehard wedding and portrait photographers. Like we would shoot like 30 weddings a year and do portrait sessions all during the week. And we were really into it. And then COVID hit, and all of our weddings for pretty much the first 6 months of 2020 got rescheduled. And we found ourselves with like an empty studio, a lot of time on our hands because all these weddings got canceled. And we were just kind of trying to figure out how to use our time, how we could be creative during this weird COVID experience. So we got in the studio and we just started shooting, working on posing and lighting, using paper backdrops. But it just kind of kept evolving, and the paper turned into these wooden sets that we started to build that were just, so we would do sets with like 2 walls, and then we'd be like, well, what if we made it bigger? What if we added in more shapes? What if we did a different paint job? And we got really into designing these sets and taking these kind of like conceptual creative portraits of people. And it kind of hit us. We weren't sure what we were doing, but we really loved it. And so we decided we wanted to make a shift in things and started to have a desire to focus more on that. So we decided to announce that we were going to step away from the weddings and wanted to focus on that. And we needed to build up a new portfolio of work in order to really make this transition. So that was kind of what we earmarked 2021 as, was the process of building a new portfolio. And we wanted to find a way to hold ourselves accountable, but also make sure we were making the most of the time that we had. So we set a goal of building 100 sets in that 1 year. And that is what really like ignited this next chapter in our lives fully, and kind of is how we sort of transitioned from being wedding photographers to artists.
So was it like, because I guess I don't even know this, but like, did it just happen all at like, y'all were just like, okay, we're kind of like don't know what to do, let's just play around in the studio, and then y'all started having a lot of fun doing other stuff, and then it just kind of like kept going and going? Or was it like a premeditated like, hey, like I feel kind of stuck with these things right now, I want to shift it up, what if we try this? Or like a combo of both?
I think we never felt stuck. That was never a situation, because the year that COVID happened, it was like going to be our best wedding year ever. And like, so we were really into it, and we were trying to grow that business as much as possible. I think it came maybe out of more boredom of time, because we had so much time on our hands because literally everything got canceled. So I think the first thing that really happened was we were having a discussion, and we had 2 books. We had a lighting book and we had a posing book. And Jada was like, I'll focus on the posing and you focus on the lighting. And then we could use our studio to like try and get better at that. So I think that's where it started. It was kind of like maybe a hobby more so, like during that time. Because I don't think we were thinking at the very beginning that it was going to end weddings.
No, and like COVID really got real March of 2020. In February of 2020, we had just signed a lease on like this giant new studio.
I can't believe that was in February before that.
Yeah, it was a month before it. And so we got that studio really to have like wedding meetings and just do like kids shoots and stuff. And it was like sitting empty. So we had our period of like COVID scaries where we were scared to leave the house, and I was like laying outside bored watching airplanes pass over. And eventually that we like hit a point where we're like, we have this studio, let's find a way to use it. So we just started doing these shoots and really working on the lighting and the posing. And then things started to kind of evolve because we realized we really liked it.
Well, what I think is like really cool about that people probably don't know too is like Jada and David did theater together in high school, but in totally different ways. Like Jada was an actor, and then David like built the sets and did the lighting. So in a lot of ways, as you're like directing people in these sets, it's like, I mean, like I've done a number of them with you, and it feels like we're little kids playing again, but it like is, you're like making people act in it, and then David's creating that. So I just think that's like a cool parallel to when y'all first met even.
I think that's probably a part of why it feels like more true and authentic to who we are, is because that was like something that both of us enjoyed doing as kids, and we found like another way to bring that to the present moment.
Yeah, I think I quite possibly could have messed up. There's never a mess up, but early on, I think I should have probably focused on theater. Because I thoroughly enjoy like building and creating. And while I was building like a wedding photography business, I was no longer like building anything physical anymore. So I think that's part of maybe why I feel currently like so much more fulfilled, because I'm building stuff, and I think that's what like my body's meant to do.
Yeah, and you've like from cars to everything, you've always done that.
Enjoyed building. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that is probably also why like our work usually isn't super happy. Like, and I think a lot of that stems from the fact that I spent so many years photographing weddings where I'm like documenting this like one just like blissfully happy emotion that's like the dominant emotion on a wedding day. And it was really refreshing to be able to explore different emotions within pictures.
I didn't think about that element.
Yes.
Well, was it hard to step away from the business? Like announcing that you weren't going to do weddings anymore. I was like, oh shit, they just did that. Like, was that scary? Was there like grief, sadness, or was it just like, no, this is what we're doing?
I think it hit differently for both of us. For me, it wasn't as scary, and it took a lot. I had the idea maybe a little sooner than.
Was David the instigator?
I'm always the instigator.
Yeah.
I also like to always announce like publicly that I'm doing things.
Because when you announce it publicly, you have to do it.
Yeah, so it makes me accountable for it. But I don't think I was ever nervous or scared about it. And it was kind of interesting because we announced that we would stop doing weddings, but we had like a year and a half of weddings ahead of us. So we knew we had work ahead of us. So it was basically like putting a really long 2 weeks notice in.
Yeah. So then you kind of had like a built-in cushion, and it was like, I'm setting this intention, I'm saying it out loud and very publicly putting out there. And like I have these things that are like scaffolding me in the meantime. It wasn't like you like just jumped off the edge of a cliff. You were like, here's my parachute.
I think some people may have felt that way for us, like family members and stuff, but it was like really thought through in that sense, because we knew we had the work and we knew we had that cushion, that amount of time to do it. And that's why the 100 set project was able to take place last year, because we had weddings going through the whole period of that.
Was it like sad letting go of weddings and like the J&D photography business side of stuff at all, or? So
J&D photo, we did another announcement where we phased out weddings, and that was about 75% of like our business. And then so the rest of it was like family shoots, real estate, everything else that we like picked up along the way that had to do with photography. And so we're still doing that amount of work. So that hasn't come to an end yet. But for the weddings, for me, I was ready. I had seen a lot of weddings and a lot of people get married, and I never really thought I would go to that many weddings. Like when I was a kid, like, oh, I'm gonna go to weddings.
No one thinks they're gonna go to that many weddings.
So it felt, I think it felt good for me. I felt good inside when it was the last one came and we completed it. I felt very successful, and I felt like the time was ready. It was ready for it to go on to the next phase.
Did you feel that way, Jada?
David is always the instigator. So he wanted to quit the weddings, and I think I was more of like a little resistant, like, oh man, that's scary.
That's
like,
a big deal.
Really? We're gonna just like tell everybody that? Okay.
It wasn't an okay though. It was like, I don't want to do that. Like now, maybe let's wait. So then like I would try again a week later. Like,
You kept like poking at it.
But then I think I came to the realization, because I was getting tired of doing them. COVID made me realize that like there's other things I could be doing with my life. And I also came to the realization that like people are going to keep sending me emails to photograph their weddings, and unless I like put a hard no out into the world, like I'm not going to stop doing this ever. So eventually I was like, yeah, okay, we can post it. But I felt like so many like anxious, scary butterflies in my stomach when we did that. But then after that settled, it felt very freeing. But that didn't, saying that into the world didn't stop the emails. So it was like a continuous commitment, like over and over again. Like, no, I'm not available to do that. No, we're not shooting weddings anymore.
The interesting thing about that was there through the period of transition, there's low points where you're financially, of course. And so you do get those emails, and you know that's a guaranteed like paycheck. And having to say no to it, I think that was the hardest part for me, but I was still okay with it. Like we pushed.
Yeah, we're just like very committed to like we have to be in this mindset.
Yeah.
Well, that's like honestly a huge thing to celebrate on a couple of levels is like one, the fact that you built a business that like you just get emails to do things like that all the time, like shows how successful you were. And even when you said no, it kept coming. But then like the willpower and like that's like a deep level of belief in yourself that you have to hold, and to continue saying that again and again, like that's making that promise to yourself stronger and stronger with each of those times.
Yeah, that's very true. It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And I mean, like I think I have a much harder time. I definitely have a much harder time saying no than you. But like when that temptation comes of like, oh, well, this would be a paycheck, or this would be something like more secure while I'm working towards this, but to really be like, no, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. And I'm going to step fully into this.
It's a lot easier to say no when you start to have doubts, and then you have someone next to you who's like, no. We don't need to do that.
I think we like all need a David being like, no, not gonna do that. But David is persistent. There's like so many things I resist. Like we finally turned the sunroom into a little studio space for me, and like David's probably been telling me that for like 2 years. And I was like, nah.
It really is funny how many ideas he has told me that I'm like, no, I would never do that. And then like 2 years later, I'm like, hey, what if we did this? And he's like, I said that.
Is that how you feel about me with TV shows? When you like tell me a TV show to watch, and then like 5 years later, I'm like, Jada, have you seen this show?
Yes, 100%.
Well, for those who don't really know about the 100 Set Project, do you mind sharing a bit about that and like what exactly it is? I guess we've kind of talked about why it started, but maybe just going into it a bit more.
You want to tag team this one?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. So, what was that? What was last year? I need your help.
2021.
2020. So in 2021, in 2020, we started building the sets, and we were starting to explore the wood and the paint, and we were developing a voice, and we were like, let's try to put this together on a website to see if we have like enough work, a portfolio, so we could share this with people. And we put the 3 or 4 shoots that we had up, and we were like, this isn't enough. Like, this isn't a big enough portfolio. And so
mostly me, right?
It was mostly you. That is so true. And so we were put like a lot of thought into it. And I like to start New Year's, like the first day of every new year, with like what I want to do for the rest of the year. So it's really important for me, like, not to be hungover on New Year's Day. New Year's Day. And it's really important for me to start that day with what I want to do for the rest of the year. So we decided to do a shoot and a set on the 1st, and we built it before the 1st, and we had it all set. And I think it was supposed to be you, Holly.
It was going to be me.
And
then I got COVID.
Holly got COVID.
Yes.
So we had to do like an adjustment, and we made it Jada. And I think through that process, we were like, we should do a lot of these this year. And right, isn't this how it went?
Yeah.
And then I think we finished the shoot. We were proud of it. And I randomly saw a Elon Musk quote that was like, if you give yourself 30 days to clean a house, it'll take you 30 days to clean it. But if you give yourself 30 minutes, you can clean the house in 30 minutes. So I was like, let's do 100 of these this year. And like, let's just make that our commitment. And so that's what we ended up doing. And that's how the project started. If you want to keep going with it.
Yeah, I mean, but it was kind of like arbitrary when we said 100. We just thought that sounded like a
cool
good
thing.
number,
Yeah.
you know?
You didn't like think it through.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't think it
100,
through.
100 really doesn't feel like...
It doesn't seem
It
like
doesn't
that
feel
much.
like a lot at all when you say it.
But there's only 52 weeks in the year, so that meant really doing like at least 2 shoots a week. But when we started out the year, we like didn't have that clicked in yet.
Mm-hmm.
So we fell behind. So then it like that meant that then at certain points during the year, we would have to do like 3 or 4 sets and shoots a week. And I think there was like maybe 1 week where we did like a set every day.
Yeah, catch up.
Yeah, and it's a very building a set is a very physical thing on your body, but then also mentally, like trying to come up with the idea.
Yeah, to stay creative that whole time.
Yeah, super hard.
Yeah, it was we definitely pushed the bounds on our creativity last year. Yeah, and then down to the styling the shoot, doing the math to build the set, and then like setting up the lights and the camera, and it was just a lot to think about. So doing like 3 to 4 shoots a week was kind of insane on top of doing a full-time job.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were working that whole time.
We were shooting
too.
weddings and family photos and everything.
So how did you not burn out? I feel like we're kind of different on this, but I also feel like I've seen y'all balance a lot in the last year and like kind of noting more and more that there are times of like big growth in life where it's like that expansion, and then there are times where it's more like, okay, nurturing a little more, listening, so you can go back into that phase.
Yeah, I think we were mission oriented once we came up with the goal, and so being tired was just part of it through that, and we knew there was an end.
That's a good point.
And it pushed us so hard and pushed us creatively and everything. It made us grow so much. But then like this year, at the beginning of this year, we took a lot of time of rest. There was confusion of like, what do we do with it now? There was a lot of like...
Yeah, were you restless when that first hit?
It would go through waves. Yeah, that would go through waves. But I think we were, at the end of the day, we were burnt out from it. So we really did need to take the time to rest. And I think we caught up on rest just fine. And it was almost like we saved the rest for after the mission was complete.
Yeah. We were super mission oriented, and that was like really all that mattered. So like if you were tired, whatever, if you didn't feel good, whatever, like we're doing this anyways to like get your shit together. It was very like, we were tough on each other, I think. Like we were like, rally your shit. We gotta do this.
You don't have
did
an idea
y'all
for
like
a set?
waver with who was the motivator like at times?
I think so,
Yeah.
because like there would be moments where David, like, he has come up with a beautiful idea, he's ready to execute it, and then like things just are not working out. The math isn't lining up, cuts weren't right, or like something happens, and the countdown clock is on, and so there did have to be like kind of a reinsurance back and forth of
Like we can keep going, like a cheerleader to get there.
Yeah, we had each other. At one of the weddings, a groom's father or bride's father said something along the lines that like, you guys are now both on a canoe, and there's gonna be times where you both are paddling and it's going smooth, but sometimes one of you guys may be tired or down, and it's the other one's job to paddle just a little harder to get you through. And I think that's like kind of like what we used through that process last year. We used that through life a lot, like to help each other through it. But I really did enjoy that quote.
Yeah. But I feel like it like made us learn a lot about ourselves. Like I get a high off of like having that like adrenaline rush and countdown and like, how are we gonna figure this out? But like in the back of my mind, I know that we are gonna figure it out, so it's not ever really a question. It's just a like, whoa, how are we gonna do this?
Running around really fast
And that's also like how you were in school. You would like save it to the last minute and you would always like get better grades than I would, even though I would like prepare so much longer. You would like turn in the paper late, but like be sneaky about it and still get an A.
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, but and then this year I think this year was an interesting year so far because like we were really in the groove with our 100 set project, but it was time for it to end because it was
so you were ready for it to end.
Yeah, it was exhausting. And like
I think we also like outgrew our studio and what we could build. I couldn't figure out like
that's interesting.
I couldn't figure out any other ways to place the pieces of wood. Like I was running out of ideas, and it was
and then having that deadline of like you have to do 100 sets, so you can't spend but so much time designing any of them. Like that kind of hit a point for me where I was like, but I want to spend like a lot of time. I want this to be so intricate and detailed, but I couldn't do it. So,
well, yeah, that's really hard because you're not creating a set, you're creating art. And like as an artist, I feel like there's this constant like, is it good enough? Like, I'm not there yet. Like, you want to refine and make it really clean.
Yeah.
But I think that's, like, a huge beauty to what you did was it was, like, the constant putting it out there and, like, kind of getting over that voice in your head that's saying, like, it's not done yet or it's not good enough. Just being like, this is it.
Yeah, and it's cool that you brought that up because that was, through the self-reflection, looking back on it, that was the biggest hurdle I had was self-doubt. Is this stupid? Is this dumb? Like, oh, you're making it doesn't look good. Like,
why am I doing
I doing this? Color's awful. Like, nobody's gonna like this. You don't like this, and so like I always had to like battle that all.
How did
last
you
year.
deal with that?
I just kept pushing through. Last year at least, and pushed through it. I think
like just kept working.
Kept working.
It was
focusing on the task at hand.
Stick to the plan. And we always scheduled our photo shoots for 6:00 the night. When we were going to have the shoot, and we usually start building them that morning, so we knew that there was going to be a model coming in at 6.
That was what, like 12 hours left?
I mean, some days we didn't start until like noon.
Yeah, but like, yeah. So we knew, like, I think that kept you going through the self-doubt was like knowing that somebody else is about to walk in that door, and you have to be done. So like, even if you're not happy,
and actually having a short timeline was probably like a gift you were giving yourself because you couldn't overthink it. You just had to do it.
Yeah. You just had to do. You couldn't. There wasn't time to think. That's true. And so I think that's how I got through my self-doubt last year. This year I've been going through all sorts of like trying to make my brain a little more strong so I don't have to deal with self-doubt as much for future projects. But that's how I got through it last year. But that was like the heaviest part of last year for me, and it was the hardest part for me, was overcoming my self-doubt.
How are you working with it now?
Affirmations, and I'm trying to like convince myself and retrain my brain that my ideas are cool and that
they are cool,
and that I should be confident, and I am confident. So I'm really telling myself I'm writing it, and it's really helping me overcome that. And then last year was one giant art therapy session for me too, so that probably also helped me get stronger.
Yeah.
But last year, like, I think really taught us in terms of a way to overcome self-doubt is like when you choose a goal, like you see your goal, you see what you want, and then you make your plan of how you want to go get it. If you like focus all your energy on that, like you can do it. Like last year was a big like goal setting and goal achieving lesson that just like reaffirmed that I can do that in like every aspect of my life.
Yeah, so that's like really creating a lot of agency. I feel like art does that in a lot of way when you're like you're physically building something and like you're creating something out of nothing. And that just is a mirror for your ability in life that you can do that in all of these areas.
Yeah.
So you said it was like a giant art therapy project for you. Like how was it kind of working through those like internal emotions that you were experiencing, or what was...
Yeah, I mean, because you reflect on what you know, and we were feeling kind of, I guess, trapped with our lives a bit. So a lot of our art that we made last year reflected being trapped and confined spaces, and kind of, I think you can look at a lot of our pictures and see a lot of self-doubt. I mean, self-doubt was just so big for us last year. It was
well,
wild.
and it's just such a like, it's a true human emotion.
Yeah.
Like, it's like every time I was in one of your sets, like I was like, oh, I know how to portray this emotion because I very deeply know this emotion.
Yeah.
And like, you had a line in your bio that just like, I mean, I think that this is like where so many people can just relate to your work on a really strong level. One, it's like these sets that create bright, bold scenarios like that in the contrast. So it's like there's that hope with the sets. They're so cool. And then the characters are confined, lost, curious, or bouncing back and forth between moments of happiness and despair. Like, that's so much it.
Yeah.
Like,
And that was us last year. So like our feelings through the whole project are definitely reflected. And it's interesting too, because like we plan out the shoot through a day. I think I focus a lot on the set and the design. Jada focuses a lot on the color. So that is like mixed. And then before the shoot, we discuss what we want the character to be doing. But then at the end of the day, Jada's directing. So her true emotions are coming out of the character. So you kind of have like my emotions bleeding through the way the set's built and what we've done. And then Jada's feelings are coming through the model. And it's really...
Was there a lot of like communication between like those two things before, or is that something that unfolded in the creating of it?
I think it was a mixture. Like some sets we had it shoots we had it so planned out and we knew exactly what we wanted to make. Other times it was kind of like going in and painting a picture. Like we were just nailing things together, piecing props together, and coming up with like a storyline on the spot.
Yeah.
So there was a mixture of both, like depending on what set it was.
Yeah, and there are some days we were just like kind of desperate and just like had to get something created, like get some sort of set built. So not much thought was put into like what this set actually means or like what this is. And then when the model was there or right before they got there, we would just try to like rack our brains to try to channel out some poses and thoughts and situations that we could play through. But that like trying to depict like real life emotions as opposed to like trying to make things look so perfect, I think was pretty powerful in the sense of we used real people for all of our shoots. Like nobody was a professional like full-time model. And so it kind of made anybody able to like hop into one of our worlds and just channel like an everyday like realistic human feeling. So it didn't really matter who you were or what your background was. Like anyone could do one of those shoots.
I think that was like such a thing that made it so relatable too, and like people want to be a part of it. And when you're in that space, like you're picking up on that energy and that like it connects to something that you're feeling because it is this raw emotion, and then you're like jumping into this other creative world with you, which is like in a lot of ways it just kind of like built a deeper sense of connection when we were in this phase of like you were so disconnected from everyone and everything. Like it was like here's a space where you're like connecting to this deeper level of human emotion through this project.
That's really interesting to hear like feedback about what it's like to be inside of one of those sets. That it was like like you're separated from the world. You're like somewhat isolated in this space. That was something I never like really thought about.
Travel is one of the things that helps me grow the most. And that's why this year I decided to put in some time to find the best travel rewards credit card that I could. And I ended up getting the Chase Sapphire Preferred credit card. And so far, I love it. It's got a ton of flexibility. It gives you great rewards points. And when you sign up, you get some bonus points. And I actually have a referral link in the show notes if you are interested in getting a Chase Sapphire Preferred or Sapphire Reserved credit card. It will give you and I some extra little points. so that we can continue to travel and grow together. So earlier we were talking about having those moments of like doubt and self-doubt and how you two helped each other kind of maintain motivation along the way. Was there like anything else that helped you stay the course?
Last year, I think that having a third person coming in order to create what we wanted to create was like the key to it. Like knowing that a model was going to be coming in at a certain time and we just had to have our shit together was like the key. And we would plan out these shoots like weeks in advance so that we were like, okay, well, next week we have 3 shoots and we know that, and there's no like backing down from that. And last year it was more just about like having faith that we will finish this project and having that kind of what's the word, where like someone's holding you to it.
Accountability?
Yeah, having that accountability with it was like the key to that for me. But this year has been a completely different
whole
experience.
Different monster.
Yeah.
Because so last year's purpose and the plan was to build a portfolio, and that was as simple as it could be. This year is trying to shift a business and rebuild a new business with this portfolio and idea that we have no idea if it's really a good one. So we're like really heavily leaning into faith over fear, I guess, right now. And I think when I say faith, I don't have like religion attached to it. It's more faith in our desire and faith in our plan and knowing faith in ourselves and knowing that our ideas are good and that they're gonna work, and that if we just keep pushing and dreaming that we can succeed. And so that's what's really keeping us going right now, I think. Yeah.
And like just leaning into like more self-reflection, more journaling, more affirmations that David brought up earlier have been like key of just trying to reflect on our self-image and build that up stronger so that we can be more confident as we push ourselves forward with this new work out into the world. And just like trying to keep our energies high and balanced and like grounded at the same time. Yeah.
Just trying to have a positive attitude about everything, even when it feels like everything is failing around you.
Yes. And like remembering that like this is a process and that it's not like the process is also supposed to be beautiful. Like this process is something that we should be enjoying because it's part of the story and it's what makes all of this like as beautiful as it is. So we have to be grateful for the process and all the learning and uncertainties that come with it, because that's what makes the end result so much more beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and there's like never really an end result.
Yeah.
And I feel like we get so stuck on like working towards that goal or that next thing that we like miss out on everything in front of us. So I'm so glad that you like said that, and that's such a good reminder to hold of like what you're doing right now. Like that's the magic. Like that's the art. And like by like this is where a lot of mindfulness like can come in. And in yoga there's this term like aparigraha, which is like surrender or letting go. And Rolf Gates like does this demonstration where you like hold a piece of paper, and when someone I'll do it right now, it's like he will tell you in a workshop to hold a piece of paper, and most people like crumple up the paper in their fist and they're like, I'm holding it, like my hand's in a fist, I'm holding the paper. And then he says, now let go. And then you let go and you're still holding that paper, but without any extra effort. So like your full energy, everything is about like you're putting your fullest, truest effort in the moment and trusting that by being like completely present, by being completely here for this moment, you're going to get to that next thing. in an even fuller way. But if you're like halfway distracted all the time as you're working towards it, like you're kind of stealing from yourself of what that can even be. You're stealing from yourself along the way, and then the end result isn't even as pure or true because it's not as like full and present in each moment unfolding leading up to it.
Yeah. I think at a certain point we all do just have to get out of our own way, because so often we're clinging too hard to things, or like trying to force things into happening, that like if you just soften a little bit and like really think about what you want and put that energy out into the world, things will gravitate towards you.
It feels like you're kind of in that softening phase. Like last year was maybe more of that like, here's the goal, here's the go, go, go.
Yeah.
And now it's about that like letting go, and like that you're still working, you're still doing the work, but there's maybe less of that like clinging.
And I think it could be just the phase we're in right now, because I like Jada was saying earlier, we both do get a bit of a high being in the go, 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 but it's also really nice to take this period of time to slow down and reflect and think. And I hope all these things we're learning this year will be added into last year's workflow, kind of, and that can make something a little more balanced and beautiful moving forward.
Yeah, well, I'm really curious about how you've made this self-reflection and it's like a deep getting to know yourself a part of your creative practice, a part of your creative practice. Like this tending to yourself, these like maybe you could share about like the rituals you're doing in the morning as you're working towards creating these things. Like you're deeply getting to know yourself and tending to yourself, and that is rippling into the work you're creating and the world and the life you're creating.
Yeah, the life we're creating. Yeah. So every morning we do this together. We will go downstairs. One of us will make the coffee, and then we'll say a little something over a candle, like an affirmation or something we're worried about or fearful about or something we're proud about, and we put it onto the candle and we light it, and then we both sit down and we listen to something peaceful, and we open a journal and we just sit and write and reflect, and we both do different things in our journal. Very different.
I like to like write a little bit about what I'm thinking that morning, and then 10 things I'm grateful for, and then dig into like my affirmations and self-image, and like writing down things like I am confident, I am decisive, I am a good communicator, and then like any large goals that I'm working towards, just to like put those thoughts in my mind and like trigger it for like, this is where I want to go.
Yeah. And I kind of do some of those things, but I also doodle, and I draw my ideas down, and I write my ideas, and then I oftentimes write down like in a kind of a form of like a story where I see myself in the future, like my future studio and everything. I kind of write it as a story for myself, and then on the same pad I just kind of keep notes through a day on it. So that's how we've been like kind of reflecting.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of like that morning time and morning routine, because it sets the tone for the way you go into the day. And like the way you're speaking to yourself, I think, is one of the most important conversations we have, and we're having it all the time. Mm-hmm. So when you're holding space to like practice how you want to communicate with yourself, it's like this space to practice, so that as you move through your day, it's like, okay, well, I probably didn't do it perfect that time, but like I can try again, and at least there's this awareness of it. But it just like sets the tone for the conversations in your mind as you move through your life.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that space to practice, like you have to, it's like we have to practice everything we're doing. And it's so easy to not even notice.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we were just saying that last year when we were in the go, go, go phase, we still did our morning. Well, we weren't doing the journaling quite yet, but we were like doing our morning routine of like drinking coffee and looking through inspirations, because our mind was just set on that goal.
Yeah.
So this year it kind of shifted. I think we're tending towards our brain a little more.
Yeah, and your soul.
Yeah, and our soul. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think too what we were like talking about before that your project really reminds me of is like that enjoyment of the process and the journey along the way, and like that there is no end result. Like you would create works of art and then tear them apart the next day to start again. And it, like, to me, and I don't know if this was an intentional thing, but like it really mirrors these endless beginnings. And like it's literally what you did with your business. Like you built this strong, beautiful, flourishing business, and then you're like, okay, now we're doing the next thing. And like that's what, like, and it, I think that's so cool though, because sometimes we like hold on to these things we build so tightly, but by continuing to build it again and again and again, like you continue growing, you get to that like next layer, that next thing, or maybe not even that next thing, but just like this new part of yourself that's already there.
Yeah. I think like feeling okay, like it's okay to change is like really important. I think sometimes people do try to like hold on so tight to how things are because there's so much like comfort in that, but at a certain point it might not be so satisfying anymore. And just having that freedom and realization and be like, well, I don't have to do it that way anymore. I can do it completely different, even if that's really scary. Maybe that would feel good.
Yeah, you're allowed to change your mind, and you're like allowed to, it's okay to admit like, oh, maybe that wasn't the best thing at that time, or maybe it was the right thing at that time and it's not right now, and that's like a part of it too. Well, what would your advice be to someone? Like, what's one thing that someone could do today to like tap into, and I know a lot of people tend to get hesitant to say like, they're not artists, I'm not creative enough, but I think that all of us has like this art inside of us, this like creative voice, this thing, like for me, like the wise one, like what wants to speak. What would be your way for someone to tap into that space within themselves? Like what can we do to tap into our creative hearts?
I mean, I think journaling is like such a good way to bring out what is deep inside of you that you aren't acknowledging. I'm also recently a big fan of listening to frequency music, and to put on
I've really liked that since you told me
like
that.
to put on like a creative frequency and just sit there and journal and like think about like what sparks joy inside of you, like what actually gets you excited, and just like write out a few things. And if you look through that list and like any one of them is like kind of like trying to speak at you more than the others, like jump into it a little bit and just like start to explore, look at work that's relevant to that, learn about it, and then start trying to find your own voice within whatever medium or outlet you fall upon.
I think maybe sometimes people get stuck in the thought process a little too much, and they'll get themselves trapped on like their visions being stuck in dream world. And I think that it's important, if you're trying to be creative, to just start making something. And it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be the best thing you've ever made, but if you start that process, then you're starting to make, and your mind will start allowing you to be able more creative with whatever you're trying to make. And so my advice would be just get started and try.
But like try to be unique to you. Like maybe at the beginning, if you find somebody who you really appreciate their style or their whatever, like it's okay to kind of emulate that to a certain extent when you're learning, but then like make it different, change it up, like look at inspiration from like other mediums. I really don't like looking at work from other photographers very often. I would much rather look at paintings or sculptures or textile art, because that spurs so much more like unique and original inspiration in my mind than like seeing somebody else's photograph, because it's just too close. It's too close.
Well, you're opening up your mind. Like you're not limiting yourself to one thing, and when you open up, you like let all these other inspirations come in, and then it can speak to you in its own way. And
it's amazing, like the more inspiration you look at in all the different mediums and whatnot, like it will build a library of just like textures and colors and visuals in your mind, so then it will just mix it all together when you're trying to visualize whatever you're trying to create. And you literally kind of cut and paste from everything you see. So like the bigger the library and the bigger you build in your mind, the better I think work ends up being.
Yeah, that's so true. There's so many things that like we have built sets of or done shoots of, and I hadn't thought it was really influenced by anything that I'd seen. And then like 6 months later, I'll watch a movie and be like, oh my God, that's where that doorway like came from. Oh, that dining room table shot. That's where that was like, and you don't even know.
Yeah, you don't even know where you're at. And
to a certain extent, you have to be like mindful of like what you're exposing your brain to, because it is picking all of it up. So make sure you're looking at like good stuff.
Yeah. Stuff that makes you happy. Yeah.
Well, how can people follow you on this like continuing to unfold chapter that you're in? How can we stay in connection with you and support you?
Well, we are pretty much on every social media channel as at Jada and David on TikTok, Instagram, all the things. But we also, on our website, jadaanddavid.com, we started a blog where we are kind of diving more in depth to our thought processes behind shoots, different techniques, adventures that we're up to. So that is probably like, it's kind of like our journal, I guess. So that's probably the most intimate information out there to follow along on.
Yep.
And because you are my blood, I have every intention of making you each come back separately for this so I can go even deeper.
Oh my God.
So stay tuned for more of the Jada and David, because there's so much more that I can make them dig into. But really, though, you two give me some of the best advice in my life and are a lot of the voices in my head that guide me. So thanks for sharing that with so many other people.
Wow, thanks,
Thank
Holly.
you, Holly.
You're welcome. I went from really weird to really sweet.
Yeah, that's so sweet.
If you haven't already, you should totally join the Dream Team. The Dream Team is an amazing group of listeners who support this podcast and make it possible every month. And you can join for as little as $3 a month. You'll support the podcast. You'll get a special handwritten postcard from yours truly and a shout out in an upcoming episode. And if you aren't able to financially support at this time, it would mean the world to me if you would consider following this podcast on your favorite streaming platform, leaving a review. They make a world of difference, and sharing an episode you love with a friend so that we can continue to learn and grow together.